It's the holidays, which usually means employing your surprise face. But winter-winning scratchers are loaded with $500 prizes, so there's always a surprise. Unlike the 27th snowflake ornament from Grandma. Play along with holiday scratchers from the Virginia Lottery at a retailer near you. For odds and more information, visit VALottery.com.
Annie had an earache on a Saturday of all days. So her mom brought her to Minute Clinic at CVS, where you can see a provider, fill a prescription, and grab essentials like pain relief products, all in one visit. Even on evenings and weekends. You can even see us online with telehealth options. For quality, affordable care on your schedule, visit Minute Clinic at CVS. That's healthier made easier. Services vary by location. See MinuteClinic.com for details.
Hey everyone, this is the Almost World Podcast. Bringing to you mind-blowing interviews with guests from all over the world. So settle down, relax, and enjoy the show. Oh yeah, by the way, if you like the podcast, please support Elmo's World Podcast on Patreon. Your support is what helps the podcast improve more and more. Okay, welcome to Elmo's World Podcast. This is Elmo, your host, and I have my friend Kyle Alander here. He's a YouTuber, and hey man, can you give us an introduction of yourself?
Yep. Hello. My name is Kyle Alander. I run the Christian Idealism YouTube channel, and I live in the United States of America, and I live in the state of California, in case anyone knows what that is. That's the West Coast, and I'm a Christian, so yeah. I have a lot of other beliefs that I have. We can go over that later, but yeah, that's pretty much what I am.
But so you have this YouTube channel. What do you discuss there, or what topics do you mainly tackle there?
Mainly philosophy of mind, although I am starting to do philosophy of religion as well. Those are like my two big kind of subjects. What I investigate is the nature of reality, the existence of God, and like the nature of what God actually is. And I'm a Christian, but I'm not like, I guess when it comes to Christianity, I think it's true, but of course it could be wrong. So, we'll see, I guess when we die, whether or not it's true or not, but yeah, so.
But, so, I have an understanding of what a Christian is, but why would you define yourself as a Christian if you don't have this sort of certainty in it? Are you in it for the culture, or you have like this relationship with Jesus and the spiritual side of it as well?
I would say it's a little bit of both, although most of my, like, I guess the weight of my belief system is more on the evidence rather than the sort of spiritual, because I don't think I've ever really had a spiritual experience, that sort of thing. I just think Christianity is true from the evidence from God's existence, and things like theoric virtues, as well as the evidence that favors the resurrection, the historical evidence, New Testament reliability. I mean, that's obviously a big, definitely controversial, but I think the weight of the evidence is in favor of Christianity, although, of course, history is not something that is absolute, certain. So that sort of thing is always going to have some sort of probability to it, right? And I think Christianity is most likely true. Probably give it around 60 to 70% true, but of course it could be false. So I'm not totally confident that it's true. I think there's a lot of interesting issues, especially on the historical aspect, but I mean, I still give it a pretty decent probability. So.
Yeah, but what's worrying me though is, what's in it for you to defend Christianity if you're not even sure about it? Why not just put a pin on it and like, okay, Christianity might be true, might not be true, I don't know. So I'm not. Why am I going to hold these views anyway? Like, so you have like this, I guess, like defense of the proper justification of the morality that Christianity provides. The resurrection, but personally, what is Christianity to you other than this rational belief that you're trying to defend? You're not
right. So
Mhm.
when we get rid of the rationality of it, it gets a little tricky because some days I want it to be true, other days I don't want it to be true, and of course that's all humans. Like we're all emotional animals, right?
Yeah.
So it depends. I mean, at that point, it just depends on the day, right? Some days I don't really care. Other days I want it to be true. Other days I don't.
Oh yeah.
But of course, we have to judge it by what's most probable, based on the evidence, right? I would say that I do. I guess if Christianity is true, then I would say I do have a sort of a personal relationship with Jesus, but it's not really the sort of thing I would use as evidence, right? That's something personal, meaning that I'm not going to present that as evidence to someone else, right?
Okay.
So it's a little different there.
But to yourself, like to yourself that you have this special relationship with Jesus Christ, and I think that coming from an evangelical Protestant perspective, you have this concept of salvation, right, and being born again. Would you say that you had this event in your life as well?
Yeah, I do. I was baptized, I think, when I was 12 or 13 years old. I can't remember the exact day, but I think it was like January. I think like a few weeks before I turned 13, I believe, is when I got baptized as a Protestant, of course. I know Catholics might have different views on that, but in terms of like Protestant, yeah, I mean, I did accept Jesus into my life a while back. And right now, I guess I'm more focused on the sort of philosophy of religion aspect, right?
Okay.
Like the nature of reality. I think it's not so much spiritual, right? It's more seeking after truth, right? At this point,
I respect that
in my life.
That's sort of the thing that I'm experiencing too. But I love philosophy, and you're right. We have to provide evidence that other people would consider as evidence. If you're not gonna say, you wouldn't accept like saying that, oh, I'm saved, therefore God is real. This is the evidence. Well, but you're right in that sense. But I think that when you say that you're not sure of it sometimes, well, that could be like, could be part of a Christian's path, but would you really
No, yeah, right.
Would you really say that you are saved though if you have these uncertainties in whether or not Christianity is
I
real?
think because I guess the whole being saved, a lot of people have like this sort of, I don't think it's like a one. I mean, obviously there's an initiation point.
True.
But it's more of a lifelong process, right?
I agree.
And sometimes what you kind of see happen is you have this sort of journey, right? Like, let's say if someone wants to become a philosopher, wants to seek after truth, well, maybe the Christian path in that sense is trying to seek after truth, right? Now, of course, that person may never know whether or not Christianity is actually true, at least in the lifetime, but he'll figure it out, once he dies, like, he meets Jesus or whatever. It's like, oh, wow, it is true. And I at that point, I don't think, of course, God's not going to punish someone. Like if someone died an atheist because they were not convinced of God's existence, God's not going to punish them for that.
Maybe
right?
he will.
So I don't know. I don't think he will, but of course, people have different views on that. So.
Okay, but like, this is what I think. I think this is awesome what you're saying. Like, I have somewhat almost like 98% similar views on it. And you're right, salvation isn't just a one-time thing. It's a path of your whole life, and people would call that like sanctification, and but what is your take on the Bible though? I think it all starts there. If the Bible is proven to be wrong,
Right.
and unreliable, Christianity, Christ, whatever God, the classical Christian God, it's over. So what would be your take on that? Would you say that the Bible is inerrant, or just historically correct?
Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't say it's inerrant. It actually really depends on what you mean by inerrancy, because there's different views on that. So the I guess the way more conservative view would be that every single word in the Bible is preserved perfectly. And I don't think that's true. I think that's
Me too.
I don't think that's true. Like, not even historical documents that we have today. I mean, not even ancient historical documents that we have today are inerrant in that sort of way. And I don't think the Bible should be any different, right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about inerrancy, I think we have to talk about the core message, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as long as the core message has stayed the same, and as long as like the events like the resurrection have happened, like historically have happened, then I think if you're going to take that sort of view of inerrancy, then sure, it's inerrant, but it's not inerrant in this sort of like, especially not in the way that most Christians like to think of it in the Protestant circles. Like, not even, I mean, if you look at the apostles, I don't think they thought that the Old Testament was inerrant in the sort of way that we like to think that the Bible is inerrant, right?
True. And the early church fathers too, right? They didn't have that.
Right.
But okay, but this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build a bridge between Christianity and like eventually talking to your views on philosophy of mind and religion. That's the thing that I'm really interested in. But before we go down there, can you tell me your understanding of who Christ is? Like I would say that you would agree with most like the Christian creed on it, that he's the son, literal son of God.
Yeah, so I do think that Jesus was God, right? One of the three persons of the Trinity. Of course, it's debatable on whether or not everything in the New Testament is historical, that he actually did do I think it's very hard to kind of verify whether except for the resurrection, with the exception of the resurrection, it's very hard to kind of prove historically that those miracles occurred. But when it comes to the resurrection, I think that's the one sort of like miracle that I think can be historically justified, right? But other than that, I mean, I do admit that it's not that easy. So, it's just, it all hinged on the resurrection. But I mean, regardless of which view you take, I mean, yeah, Jesus is God, I think. Of course, the probability, I think, is sort of the same as my confidence in Christianity, which is around 60 to 70%, right? So, of course, I do think that Jesus existed, but the confidence of him actually being God is not as high, but it's still reasonable, I think. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, I've gotten your views on mostly on New Testament, but I want to ask you about your views on Genesis. This is something I always ask my guests who believe in the Bible, like, what's your take on that? Like, is it the old earth, new earth? And are the miracles did the miracles really happen, or is it just allegorical or mythical?
Oh, you're talking about the Genesis, right?
Genesis and the miracles as well, like the Moses and.
Yeah. So I'm a theistic evolutionist.
Awesome.
I think.
Still there?
Yeah. One. Although I'm open-minded to like other sort of views on that, but yeah.
Okay.
So.
Evolutionist, huh? Well.
Yeah.
I think William Lane Craig is also like old earth. I heard his interpretation of Genesis as well. Okay, so but what's your take on that, right? Like, some Christians would say that it's really you have to God-centric in your understanding of the Bible rather than like man-centric. Like man would interpret this because it's based on like science and what we know today. But if you really believe in God, you would believe, you would focus more what he is trying to present. And like he did say that it's sort of 6 days and the seventh day he rested. What would be your take on that?
Yeah, so I wouldn't take a man-centric approach, and I also wouldn't take a God-centric approach, and that sounds kind of weird. I would take what's called a culture context-central approach.
Okay. Yeah, that's
so basically,
true.
You want to look at the culture context. You want to kind of understand, okay, what was their view of creation, right? And I think when you sort of look at the sort of different views on that, I think the functionalist one is probably the most probable, or either that or some sort of like mythic history view. Yeah. And that's just looking from the culture context of what they were trying to get across, right? So that's sort of my view. The Bible was not written in English. We're not going to be able to understand it from our culture perspective, and definitely not from English, right?
Yeah.
It was written in ancient Hebrew, so I think that's just the best way to go.
Well, I think that I think this is essential to talk about what your views and take on the Bible is, because you're someone like a rational modern person believing in a book that claims so many unscientific miracles, especially like claiming knowledge of the metaphysical reality of the universe, like having a triune God and Jesus being a son of God, and functionalist creation. It's really huge claims coming from this book. No, that's real. That you claim to say. Also understand that there are things that might not be what it really means or what what we think it is. So there are many possible wrong interpretations. But okay, other than that though, like you maybe have a reasonable take on the Bible. But let's talk about your understanding of the philosophy of mind, right? I think you derive your arguments that consciousness is like proves there's a dualism of some sort, and that from that we can derive that there is like a spiritual realm, God exists, other conclusions.
Stuff. Yeah, so I would actually it's point out the dualistic approach. I'm actually not a dualist, so I would be a monist, but I'm a monistic idealist.
Awesome.
And an idealist would say that all that exists is experience, or that all that exists is really consciousness, and that the physical world is just really perception of that, right?
Dang.
So it's kind of like when you're, like, for example, when you're dreaming at night, that dream world is perception, right?
Whoa.
And so I would say that our world kind of works the same way, where our physical world is just perception.
Okay.
Right?
So it's in a way like there is some sort of like world of forms, but we're within that world of forms, and we're just in the third dimension, but there's like more dimensions waiting for us outside, like something like that.
Yeah.
But it is a shared reality, not solipsism.
No. Yeah, it's definitely a shared sort of reality.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you're a Christian theist. You believe in a rational universe that has causality. That there is a past and a present and a future, but this idealist universe, which is mainly just we're just in another dream state of some sort, like transcendent from something similar to how we dream.
Yep.
So how is that though? Like, in our dreams, it's just us. We don't have any interactions with other conscious beings. But why do you think, or why is it that do you think that we can have interactions with other conscious beings in this dream state? Like, what makes this?
Well, actually, so I think that dream characters are conscious.
Whoa.
I think, I know that sounds kind of weird, but there's actually been a lot of interesting studies done by Tolley on this, and he concluded that we should treat dream characters as if they're rational beings.
Damn.
Right? So I think that even within our own consciousness, like when we're dreaming at night, the dream characters in that consciousness are basically fragments of our own sort of psyche, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, when we're awake at night, well, when we're not dreaming, of course, when we're in this world, I think that we are sort of like fragments of the universal mind, right? So the universal conscious mind is the mind that created our world, and we're just kind of like fragments of that. So
whoa, that's really deep. Like, if I did believe that, like, I would like take a whole day off and like think about what that means for real. Like, you know, I'm a really rational person. Like, I would look at the implications of what truths I believe. And you're right. Like, so if I believe, you know, you're starting from that this universe is idealist, you know, it's just conscious. It's also part of the one universal consciousness. And so if I myself am part of this consciousness, I am also a consciousness. If I have a dream, then my conscious characters in my dream could have sleep and have dreams themselves. You know, it's like infinite regress. And
right.
Damn. Okay, but let me ask you this though: how did this affect you and your interactions with people, with life, and how you treat life, knowing that or believing at least that we're sort of in a dream, like, but
it's kind of weird because even though it doesn't really imply any religious implications, like I think it kind of points in that direction where, you know, everyone's sort of connected. Like we all came from the same sort of source, right? Mm-hmm. Like we are all sort of like alters of consciousness or dream character. Now, Bernard, like idealist philosopher Bernard Kashup, he says that we're all like alters, so disassociative. It's like the whole universe has like DID, which is
what was his name
disassociative again? Bernard Kashup.
Bernardo. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna search that later.
Okay, yeah. So I would say that we're sort of like alters of consciousness. So the philosopher Bernard Kashup talks about dissociative identity disorder. And that's basically the idea that we're all sort of disassociated alters of this universal mind, right? And that would sort of imply that we're sort of like dream characters, although there are some idealists that have disagreements about what that actually means. But the basic, I guess, concept is that we're all sort of fragments of consciousness, of universal consciousness in that sort of way. So,
but what's interesting though is, you know, I would say that the ontology of every at least like dream state differs, right? Like, for example, when I sleep, I dream. It's not physical of how we would define material. No, it's not, and you can't really, you know, hold what my dream, like how I hold like this mouse right now. So would you say that? Why do you think there's this level? There are these levels of dream states, or is it simply that material is actually idealist like stuff? You know?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't think there's really any sort of ontological distinction between dreams and reality. I think the only real distinction is that when we're dreaming, it's our sort of like subconsciousness that kind of gives us that experience, whereas in this world, it's the universal consciousness that has given us the sort of experience of the, you know, the actual world that we're, you know, that we're experiencing right now. That's what I think, right? So it basically just goes back to the whole concept that all that exists is experience, right? That's all. Like, there's nothing in reality that you're not going to find that's outside of experience. Even in principle, you're not going to do that. So, you know, just as a dream world is literally just an experiential world, the same sort of thing applies to our world, where our world is just an experiential world. So, yeah.
So in this way, though, like, right, like, don't call me crazy, but if this is true, right? Like reality is simply this experience that I'm having. So what if I'm insane? Like I feel, and my brain, brings or forces me to believe that I'm friends with Elvis Presley, or I'm a mermaid, or I'm a super wealthy guy that owns the universe. So in that insane mind, would that actually be reality for me? Like, is that really, or am I just
No, because in that case that would be, just like a dream, just like when you're dreaming, that's not actually the outside world. We have to sit or make a distinction between objective reality and then a subjective reality. So
okay.
you could
But
have
let me stop you there though, right? Because if
wait, what was that?
this
Sorry.
yeah, but you say that my dreams, a person's dream, individual's dream is similar of content, or at least of ontology to this
Yeah. So
reality right now.
ontology, yeah.
Yeah, but it's
So ontologically it's the same.
But what would make this objective reality different from any subjective reality? Because they're just the same, there's no difference at all. So
the sort of distinction, right, and I understand that that's a concern, right? Because we don't want to be subjective idealists here. But I guess in that case, then you could say that the objective world is transpersonal. What does that mean? Well, basically means that the objective world isn't controlled by us, right? Whereas a dream world, when you're dreaming at night, that sort of world would be personal. So it's a personal world, even though like sometimes you may not have control of it. Most of our dreams we don't have control over. It's the same sort of thing with the objective world, is that we're kind of, because we're disassociated from that world, because we're disassociated from the objective world, then it's going to act independently of us, right? So it's objective in the sense that it's out there beyond our subjectivity, but at the same time, it's because the reason why it's objective, and the reason why we have the subject and the object is because the subjective, we're ourselves, we are dissociated alters, we're dream characters. I think the world beyond ourselves is objective. So
I think the distinction you're making is either that it's the differences in state of control, or maybe it's more in accountability and consequences, or simply that we're finite.
Yeah, it is. It is differences in control. Like even in our own dreams, we can't control our dreams fully, right? If I tell you to not think of a pink elephant, you're going to think of a pink elephant. Like there are certain things we don't have control over, right? Even our own mental states we don't have control over all the time. I mean, if all of reality is mental in that sort of way, it's not surprising that the objective world isn't under our control, because a lot of mental states, in fact, I would say like 99% of mental states, of mental things, are outside our control.
Okay.
Right.
But before we dive into that, we're talking about control, and I want to know your perspective on, let's say, just determinism. I would believe that if you were focusing on philosophy of mind, you would understand that consciousness is sort of like a buffer for like this mechanical determinism that we have. So would you believe would be an indeterminist in that case?
Yeah, I would hold to either some sort of compatibilism or some sort of like soft libertarian free will.
Okay.
So I do think we do have free will, though it's sort of limited.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, welcome to the club, brother. I mean, but anyways, I'm more of a just libertarian free will. I don't see the sense in compatibilist, but okay. Other than that, though, so we are beings, right, that are able to decide for ourselves like the outcome of our actions, but with limited, of course, like parameters set by this objective reality that we are in. Therefore,
Right.
and what is the me though? Like, what is the self, right? Like, where does my essence lie? Am I just simply like the combination of the consciousness in my brain, or am I actually part of the conscious universe itself? I think maybe
Yeah.
it's both. So how do you define or solve the problem of the principle of individuation?
Yeah. So that's actually a really good point, individuation. In fact, that's something that I'm still trying to like figure out, which is how does a universal mind fracture or sort of create these sort of other minds within it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's an idea that I'm playing around with, and this idea is called submergence.
Mm-hmm.
And what submergence says is that instead of our consciousness being emergent, right? So that's the physicalist approach. You could say that our consciousness is submergent within a universal mind in the same way that dream characters are submerged within our dreams,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this sort of idea of individuation, I think, comes from this idea of subsumption, that we're basically all so if you're not the universal mind, then you're a subsumed mind, meaning that you're a mind that is kind of like fractured and individuated from the universal mind. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question we need to ask is, well, why does that occur, right? That's a good question to ask. I'm still trying to figure out like the reason why that happens in nature, though. I mean, dissociative identity disorder, I mean, we have good evidence for it already.
Yeah, it is.
So,
True.
I mean, it's a natural process. So regardless, right, regardless of which view you sort of hold to, subsumption, disassociation, whatever you want to call it, is going to be a natural process. Why does nature do it? I don't know. I don't know why nature does it, but it does it. And that's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, the reason I named my podcast Elmo's World is not because I want to own a world, or that I'm crazy or anything, but I love this movie called Sophie's World. It's a book, I think, too. Yeah, have you watched that? It's
no.
Okay. So the Sophie's World is basically this, there's this girl, her name is Sophie, and then she dives into the philosophy and stuff like that, from Socrates to the modern philosophers, so as she dives into this, she realizes slowly that her reality is idealist, and she's actually just a book being written in the mind of a writer that wants to go home. Right. And at the end, of course, the writer finishes the book and the reality will disappear. So what Sophie did was she went into the subconscious and then sort of hid her reality in that subconscious of the writer so they could continue to live. So in a way, Plato and the Neoplatonists, they already sort of had these ideas even 2,000 years ago, and so awesome. But would you say that this conscious being, you believe that there is a universal mind that is everything in the universe, what would this being be if in comparison to a writer in Sophie's World?
Yeah, so I would say that the universal mind is God. That this universal mind is...
But what is God?
The foundation... Well, that's the question, right? So there's different... It turns out the idealist kind of view doesn't say anything about that, right? So you could be a Christian and accept the perfect being sort of God, or you could be some sort of deist where you have this impersonal God, right? So in that's a different question altogether. I happen to lean towards more the perfect being theism, but of course, if Christianity is false, I would say that if Christianity is false, then it's most likely to be the other direction, which is this impersonal being. Yeah, deist sort of God. But I mean, regardless, it's still God, but I mean, there's different sort of perspectives on the nature of that God.
Well, I sort of understand your leanings on Christianity, because like if it is one of the most likely thing there, because it's already like billions of people are already doing this. It's traditional and stuff. But I guess that you still are looking for stronger evidence to prove Christianity in order for you to say that you are sort of absolutely certain that it is true. I think that you're looking for something.
Yeah, I'm trying to seek after truth, right?
Yeah. The same.
So I'm trying to seek after truth.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So let me ask you this then. I judge people the Cosmic Skeptic, he released this video about the cognitive dissonance about like vegans and stuff, like, and meat eaters. It's so awesome. Like, and I didn't have a word for it, but he's right. Cognitive dissonance is like believing contradictory things and you not really noticing it, but you're so dissonant. And well, I think that 100% of human beings have this in some level. But I try to be the least cognitively dissonant I can be, so I try to rationalize my beliefs and order them in a way that it makes sense. So I wouldn't want to be an atheist, a materialist physicalist who believes in human dignity, because like it doesn't make sense, So I have to work all these out, and it's brought me so many existential crises. But I want to dive into your view, your worldview. So how would you rationalize valuing human or other conscious beings in this universal mind, these submerged conscious characters in another dream? How would you rationalize, like reasoning or living with them normally, or treating them with respect, dignity, and love? What's your morality there?
I'm more. I do believe in objective morality. I think that we should just treat people the way we want to be treated, right?
But why?
Because we're all. Well, why? Because it's the right thing to do, right? Now, of course.
Why is it the right thing to do, though? That's the real question. Is it harm principle, utilitarian, or is it that God said so?
Oh, my moral. Okay, yeah. So I'm actually undecided on ethical theories.
Well,
I don't know I don't know if any ethical theories are true, but. So I take more of a pragmatic approach.
Okay, so in a way, you're like an ethical nihilist or moral nihilist, but you choose something more pragmatic, like that.
I'm more of a pragmatist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. At least I think that's not like cognitively dissonant from being an idealist. I think it sort of makes sense, right? Like you understand and believe that we're all just in a dream, so I'm living my life. So what makes this life different from like this conscious mind's life, right? So then you decide to live it and live with others, even if these others aren't aware that it's a dream. They're in a dream. It's really complicated, much more complicated. Okay, so how does this pragmatist morality work then? Like, what are your, bases or foundations on it?
Well, just to see what works. To see, okay, is society overall getting better, which I think it is.
Mm-hmm. But okay,
and the golden rule.
But that's
of course people have different.
That's very I don't know. It doesn't jive, because when you mention like when you define what's best for society, what is best for society, and why should I seek the best for society? It's still there. There's still a blur there, but I think you should. You lean more on.
I'm not good with. I'm not good with ethics, so yeah, I haven't really studied ethics that well.
But
so.
the question is though, like, you pursue truth every day of your life, but at least do you have like this tentative moral framework that you use in everyday life, right? So you walk down the street, you know, and you see like an old lady struggling. So, but you decide to help her because you think it's right. But why do you think it's right to be good? You know, it's you have to have this at least basis for your actions. Otherwise, you're not someone who's pursuing the truth. You're just accepting a truth that you don't know if it is the truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been talking so much, but you know, I think that you have a divided worldview though, right? So you have this Christianity, you know, where you're holding, where you can tell people you're a Christian so that they would accept you in their category. But the truth is that you're still a deist and living in this idealist world. But you don't know, you're still in the dark on whether Christianity is true, but you're still putting a pin on it so that people would, you know, at least look at you as part of their tribe or something. This is not, I'm not to offend, but this is what I think. This is what I think. Yeah, so that's why you can't answer basic questions about morality, because if you do stand on your Christian foundations, you would say because, you know, Jesus loves us and he wants us to follow the Christian path and obey God's commands and be a good person, you know. I think if you did stand on Christianity, that would be a basic answer. But you don't. That means that you're still searching. And I don't think that's a problem. I think that's good. You know,
no, right.
It's intellectual integrity. But if you have like intellectual integrity, you have to be at least say what you mean about Christianity. So I don't know what. Maybe there are practical reasons to identify as a Christian. I do agree. Me too. You know, yeah. It's a real problem, man. Like I relate to you. Like last month, I decided to be a monist, physicalist. I don't know how, but also a theist. And but I decided that my dad's gonna kick me out of the house if I say that I don't really believe in Christianity. So I'm still young.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But life, man, like being a philosopher is hard. So we gotta still.
Yeah, I think being a philosopher, it's you have to try your best not to pick tribes.
Yeah. True.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
I respect that. Yeah. But at least like for the benefits of it, you know, and until you can, for what I do is like I'm a Christian, you know, I identify in Eastern Orthodox belief system, but I sort of have this space in my mind where I don't have any presuppositions. Like where it's not that I'm an atheist in this part of my mind, but that my processes, you know, in thinking and rationalizing doesn't include any like Christian foundations, but just purely analytic philosophy. You know, it's just me trying to understand reality. And that's why I have this podcast, you know, diving into people's worldviews. It's really interesting how other people think. And if I could take that in me and maybe add that as a consideration, maybe it could get me a little closer. You know, but until then, I'm going to hold this belief because at least I don't feel crazy believing two things that contradict each other at the same time. You know, it's a messed up thing that I'm doing. Yeah. But yeah, how about you though? In terms of your pursuit of truth, how is it right now? Like, how's the progress going?
Sorry, what was that? Because you sound like a robot for a big chunk of that.
Okay. So how's your pursuit of truth right now?
Right now I'm reading more philosophy, religion, literature, as well as I'm starting to get into New Testament stuff. There's a lot of books I got on that subject. But yeah, I mean, right now I guess my main focus is trying to figure out submergence and why is it that nature or God creates other beings or whatever. And I guess that, and plus New Testament stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I admit that New Testament, that's a whole, there's still a lot I have to get through, but so far it's very interesting what I'm finding on that one. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that in order for us to really pursue the truth, I think we need to be honest. And what you're doing, man, I think you're also being honest, and Christianity might or might not be true in terms of how we would prove it evidentially in a scientific way. I would agree. It does require some faith, or at least a lot of faith. Would you say that it's true that Christianity needs faith for you to believe it?
It depends on what you mean by faith.
What is faith to you, though?
To me, faith is trust, right? So in the same way that you have faith that your bank isn't going to blow all your money away, same sort of thing with Christianity, where I guess you have to have that sort of faith, right? For me personally, I live my life as if Christianity is true, but I don't know if it actually is true. So yeah, that's my sort of perspective on that.
Well, I think that you would defend Christ's resurrection as historically proven. I think you would take that position.
I would say it's probable. I wouldn't say it's. I don't think history can prove. I think it's just probable that it occurred. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in terms of the philosophy of mind, you have these concepts, but I think that. But how did you come up with that though? Like, and when did you start to form these theories, like divert from the normal, just non-idealist to an idealist? How did that start?
I actually so I was convinced by the arguments from quantum mechanics. If you watch Inspiring Philosophy's videos on that,
yeah, I love that.
The digital physics argument, that's what put me over the edge.
Yeah.
But now it's funny because now I'm taking a different approach. I'm taking a more philosophical approach. So I wouldn't actually. So the arguments that convinced me of idealism, I wouldn't use now. I think there's better arguments. So
okay, but how would you prove it philosophically, though? I don't know how
you can do it. There's a few ways you can do it. So one way is through phenomenological analysis, which is where this is kind of what Bradley does in his books, where he basically investigates and analyzes the nature of experience and how experience is something that cannot be reduced to something more that's not experience. And that we just can't be aware of anything that's not experience, right? You can go that route, or you could go the theoric virtues route, where you say that idealism, and when you compare these theoric virtues like simplicity, explanatory power, predictability, idealism comes out on top because it's able to explain everything without having to invoke some sort of extra ontological category. Or you could just do the whole Morean shift arguments, which you take arguments for physicalism and then you turn them into arguments for idealism.
How do you do that though? Like, how do you take physicalist arguments and turn them into idealist arguments? I've never.
You just switch the ontology. You just say that consciousness is primary and that the universe is causally closed, so therefore all that exists is mental activity, right? So that the physical basically is just mental causes and effects.
I guess this all started with the double slit experiment, eh? Like,
yeah. That I don't take that approach anymore, but yeah, that was how it started. So
yeah. I thought about it too, but no, I didn't even think know what to think about the double slits. Like, we're still not even close to trying to understand what consciousness is. So I'm not gonna make any implications for that yet. It's hard, especially like the scientists like came up with all sorts of crazy ideas after that, like infinite universe and I don't know what else. A lot of crazy stuff, and you just and without enough information to verify if your theory is correct, and you start making stuff up. It's it's like a wild story, and then like there are legends and stuff. So but anyways, so your first the first thing that you said in order to philosophically prove idealism, other than the switching ontology, can you elaborate on that again? I didn't get it at first.
On phenomenological analysis.
Okay, how do you do that?
Well, there's different routes that you could explore the nature of experience. And there's a quote by F.H. Bradley on this. Let me see if I can find it in my notes. But that's one route you could go. Hold on, Okay, that's not gonna... I'm trying to find...
Yeah, so, but I think phenomenology is the future. Because that's where I specialize. But and I love studying it, but I have no idea yet. Like, I'm not an expert. But
that's something I'm still exploring myself. But yeah, if you read philosophers like Bradley, McTaggart, he talks about this as well in his books about the nature of experience. So
yeah, but you tend to, like me, we both love or interested in philosophy, but would you call yourself like also interested in mathematics or science, or mainly just philosophy?
No, I'm not good at math, so
yeah, same here.
I'm just gonna stick with philosophy.
Okay,
yeah,
same here, man. Yeah, but the thing about philosophy, truth is, no philosopher has made any progress since the Greeks, since the sophists. We're all still speculating. That's why there are still so many theories, and religion is defeating most of philosophical theories, because religion is very pragmatic. It's very useful with the traditions and stuff, and it's easier to swallow. But I love philosophy in that I am able to be in this process where I could try to search for the truth, even though I know that I probably will still not be able to find it. But a friend of mine who loved philosophy too, she said that truth is the pursuit of truth. That's my truth. It's just that I'm always in this state that I'm searching, and I hope that God, if he is real, he won't blame me for searching God, because by definition God is truth.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyways, so what were you talking about, the phenomenological analysis?
Yep. Yeah, so I found the quote. So it says, find any piece of existence take of anything that anyone could possibly call a fact, or could in any sense assert to have being, and then judge if it does not consist in sentient experience.
Mm-hmm.
Try to discover any sense in which you can still continue to speak of it when all perception and feeling have been removed, or point out any fragment of its matter, any aspect of its being, which is not derived from and is not still relative to this source. When the experiment is made strictly, I can myself conceive of nothing else than the experienced. Anything in no sense felt or perceives becomes to me quite unmeaning. And as I cannot try to think of it without realizing either that I am not thinking at all, or that I am thinking of it against my will as being experienced, I am driven to the conclusion, for me, that experience is the same as reality. The fact that falls anywhere else seems, in my mind, to be mere word and a failure, or else an attempt at self-contradiction. It is a vicious abstraction whose existence is meaningless nonsense and is therefore not possible.
Damn. Wow.
So that's one example. Yeah, I mean, phenomenological analysis is definitely, you got to really think about it long and hard, but that's kind of one example of an idealist sort of arguing from that.
Well, for the audience listening, I think that you could try to brief it in like the analogy of the Jason Argonaut's ship. That from at one point, and to a certain point, like every piece or part of the ship changes, but at the end of the day, it's still Jason's ship. But even though no part of that ship was still there at the end from the start, so in a way, like that's what the experience is. The experience is it being Jason's ship, even though it's not. Jason's ship isn't really derived from or found in a material sense that we would explain, right? Like any emotion, and how the consciousness itself is just the experience. It's not reducible to matter, is how I would say. So,
right,
not reducible to matter, then everything is just experience. So that's how it understood it. It, I guess, solved the problem.
Right.
I think, yeah.
Because even a dualist, I mean, that would be I don't even think a dualist could really avoid that sort of argument, right?
True.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that idealism fits with Christianity very well, and I don't think that it's problematic for a Christian, Well, if I could try to mix it with the Christian perspective on reality, right? Because Christians believe like we are created. So in a way, God created this reality that has actually no difference whatsoever with how heaven would be or how hell would be, but it's that this reality is more or less like very more complicated in that having this sort of, I can't explain it. It's just confuse other people, but right. So but let me ask you this, Kyle. Like you're a philosopher, right? And you want to pursue the truth, but to you, then, would this be sort of the meaning of your life? That okay, this is the purpose of my life. I'm questioning things, and I will continue to question things all my life. And what would would you be satisfied when, like, at the day you die, like, I've been asking questions all my life and I'm still asking questions with no answers? Would you would be satisfied then?
I don't know. We'll have to see. Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, I don't know, because I'm always going to be asking questions. There's always going to be, I mean, maybe I'm hoping, maybe by that time I'll have a grand worldview, right? But even within that worldview, there's still unanswered questions, right?
True.
Right? So in terms of questions, there's always going to be questions. But I mean, in terms of like my actual worldview, I think it'll be pretty, I guess, solid by that time. But we'll see. So
well, man, like Kyle, thank you so much for being on my podcast. If you wanna plug anything, like you could and tell the audience any final statement, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so just as I said in the beginning, I run a YouTube channel called Christian Idealism. You can go check out my channel there, and I do a lot of philosophy of mind content and philosophy of religion content. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing.
Well, thanks, man. So that's the end of it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This is your host, Elmo Ador Jr. And thank you for listening in. And please subscribe. Please follow us on Facebook. Please follow this. Please. Thanks.
We're moving in a new direction, moving forward, and moving beyond smoking. We are Altria, and our companies are leading the way in moving adult smokers away from cigarettes by taking action to transition millions toward potentially less harmful choices as we move from being known as a tobacco company to being recognized as a tobacco harm reduction company. Altria is moving beyond smoking. Find out how at altria.com.
Gearheads know that some projects need so many parts, it feels like you need a whole storage unit just to store them. That's what eBay Motors' 122 million parts are for. Think of it as your virtual parts garage. They've always got the right fitment at the right prices. Use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.